This is the screencast for mental health and disorders chapter, and that would be chapter 7 in your textbook. So I'm going to give an overview, and as you have seen from other narrated PowerPoints, I do include quite a number of references, and I think the National Institutes of Health and National Institutes of Mental Health papers will be helpful and instructive for you. I don't expect that you will read everything, and I wanted to include as many offerings as I can to supplement and enhance your learning and your specific interests and career goals. So here we go. Fortunately, now there is more of an integration for healthcare and mental health care, and primary care providers and mental health specialists work collaboratively and do recognize mental health diseases as diseases that will be discussed and will be treated. There is a high cost of mental health care. 26% of the United States population are diagnosed with a mental disorder every year, and 15% of the total burden of diseases by the year 2020 will be the cost of mental health care. And unfortunately, and I seriously do hope that this changes, and I'm sure many of you do as well, that mental disorders are not usually covered by health insurance. There is a diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders, and I have included a link to it below, right here. You can go there and take a look. You will be, those of you who are going into medical records technology will be all very familiar with the DSMs for various diseases and conditions. So you can go reference this and take a look. There are other diagnoses of mental health disorders and diseases, and they are classified by the APA, or American Psychological Association or Society, and as I mentioned, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistic Manuals, by insurance providers and Mental Health Association, and they do use the codes in this DSM primarily. Oops, let's go. A mental status examination would include appearance of the individual, their speech, their motor activity, their mood, or what we would call their affect, how they present, their perceptions, their thought content, and their judgment. The discussion of nature, which generally refers to genetics, and nurture, which refers to environment, is still being discussed in terms of its influence on mental disorders and diseases, as well as other disorders and diseases, including various cancers and autoimmune diseases and so forth. We don't really have time to discuss all of these issues in this particular class. I think this will be an ongoing discussion for quite a while. Here are some diseases, mental health diseases and disorders listed for you. As you can see, I've included links to NIH papers or NIMH, National Institutes of Health or National Institutes of Mental Health, for your reference. I'm not going to totally read all of them, but depression, you will be able to see what the actual criteria are for diagnosing depression. Many of us have felt depressed, perhaps all of us somewhat, or feeling blue or in a funk. This is not what is defined as clinical depression. Clinical depression involves much more than feeling blue. So you can see hopelessness, worthlessness, guilt, despair, having difficulty working, sleeping, and enjoying life. Oops, let's go back. Bipolar disorder, which also has been called manic depression, is a cycling between depression, clinical depression, and manic behavior. And here's a link to read more about that. You can find many other references, I realize that, online. So these are just a few that may be helpful in your studies as well as in your career goals. Schizophrenia is an altered sensory perception that includes physical and psychological changes that affect brain functioning, behavior patterns, and the 5 senses, all of our senses. I guess I want to make a reference to the use of cell phones in one context, and I'm not meaning to trivialize anything. I don't believe I am. But I remember not so long ago, in the days before cell phone usage by most of the population, when I would see an individual walking down the street appearing to talk to her or himself, I would take a second look and wonder if this person was suffering from a mental disorder, perhaps schizophrenia. Now I take a second look and see whether this person is talking on their cell phone. So just to add that, it really is to me a change in the culture, and I just find it kind of interesting how we appear now to be walking down the street talking to ourselves when we're actually on our cell phone. Okay, that's enough of that. Anxiety disorders are classified in many ways: generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder. You can also find references to these on the NIH site if you wish. I included a reference to PTSD because there's so many more people suffering from this condition, particularly with, unfortunately, all the wars that we have been and continue to be engaged in. In prior wars, and I'm not old enough to remember World War I firsthand, but people who were called shell-shocked were actually suffering from PTSD, and I think the knowledge of this condition has broadened, and more people are receiving treatment for this condition. Not only people who return from war suffer from this condition. Any traumatic event can trigger this condition. Fortunately, more people are being recognized and treated, but still there are many who are going untreated and unrecognized. Personality disorders, antisocial disorders, borderline personality disorder may include a pattern of just attention, I shouldn't say just, but a pattern of attention seeking and excessive emotions. Narcissistic, avoidant behaviors, all of these are included in mental health diagnoses. Substance abuse and dependence, these can be caused by and can also lead to mental disease and disorders. So addiction, and with addiction becomes a tolerance, so that an individual often needs more and more of the drug in question. Polysubstance abuse dependence is the use of 3 or more substances on a regular basis. There are some disorders that are generally diagnosed during childhood or adolescence. Intellectual disability, which is also known as cognitive disability or has been called mental retardation. There are many aspects of this. The autism spectrum disorders are, I think, very much in the news and in the public mind these days. And the Nova film that you watched a couple weeks ago, dispelled the myth that there was a link between autism and receiving vaccinations. It is very important to receive vaccinations. There is not scientific evidence to say that vaccinations lead to cause or increase the risk of autism. So here is a link on this page to, again, an NIH paper detailing some of the aspects of autism. Attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder is also linked here and is also diagnosed during childhood, and I think is one that is much in people's minds these days as well. Here's some more. Anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, often diagnosed during childhood and adolescence, and I have included a link to eating disorders as defined by the National Institute of Mental Health and the National Institute of Health. Be thinking about why these diseases are classified as mental disorders. Sexual disorders, again, you can find all kinds of references. I couldn't find really a direct reference to all of these, but if any of these stimulate you to seek more information, by all means do so. Dyspareunia refers to pain that is associated with sexual intercourse. This could occur more often as individuals, particularly females, age. There certainly are links to physical as well as mental triggers for these conditions. And some of these, again, are exacerbated as individuals age. Premature ejaculation, again, mental and physical components to all of these sexual disorder components. All right, that is the end of the PowerPoint presentation. Again, be sure that if you have any questions regarding this PowerPoint or anything else to do with the class, as you know, the best way to reach me is via Moodle messaging. And I will chat with you again soon.